This time around, I'm going to look at Jane Austen's narrative style, this elusive, intelligent, sometimes evasive speaking voice, which is what turns a fairly straightforward love story into a sophisticated novel. I look at the characters too, who are often complex in their thought processes. There is a psychological realism to these characters. The story only becomes compelling, I think, because of this depth. The way Jane Austen communicates the less straightforward thought processes of the characters, the misconceptions they have, their fears and resentments, the way they don't always take the most logical course of action. This, to me, is psychological realism, which was new to novel writing for the period. I'm going to focus today on two aspects of Austen's prose. First, I'm going to look at the way the narrative moves through the viewpoints of different characters with an easeful agility. Often we're balancing the perspectives of several different people at the same time. This movement between characters' viewpoints constitutes the narrative technique we call free indirect style or free indirect speech. Secondly, I'm going to talk about dialogue, the things the characters say, how they say what they say, and how Austen creates a sense that people mean something other than what they are saying. Human interaction is complicated in Austen's fiction, and in this way she's true to life. The succession of cause and effect in Persuasion is rarely just one event directly giving rise to another event. Austen is interested in the mental baggage that encumbers action and the irrationality that can prompt it. The way I explore these ideas will be through close reading, exactly of the kind that is going to be asked of you in your assignments here. A good place to start considering the psychological nuances of this novel is the title. Now, I know that does make it sound like I haven't read it, but stay with us. The word persuasion occurs in various forms no fewer than 30 times in the novel. That sequence begins with the lawyer, Mr. Shepherd, convincing Sir Walter Elliot that he must rent out Kellynch Hall. We're soon told about the backstory in which Lady Russell urged Anne not to marry Frederick Wentworth. And the goal that Anne settles on in Volume 2 is to persuade Wentworth to propose marriage to her once more. People in the book persuade each other not only to do things, but to think things. Quote, "I wish you could persuade Mary not to be always fancying herself ill," Charles Hayter says. In turn, Mary says to Anne, "You might persuade him that I really am very ill, a great deal worse than I ever own." So, each in turn persuades Anne to persuade the other of something. And most importantly in the book, ruefully, the older and wiser Anne looks back on why she rejected her love. Quote, "It had been the effect of over-persuasion. It had been weakness and timidity." So we're reading a book that doesn't just narrate a series of actions, but investigates the processes that lead people to take action. How do we get people to do things? How do we dissuade people from foolish decisions? And a universal challenge, how can we encourage people to consider perspectives that are at odds with their current opinions, their prejudices? The vehicle that communicates all of this psychological complexity is that narrative technique, free indirect style. And I'm going to bring in a quotation from another scholar here to broach this method Austen uses. The critic Louise Flavin writes, and I quote, "In no other Austen novel is so much of what happens filtered through a central consciousness, affecting the reader's perceptions of people and events in ways not possible when the narrator's report is the major authority in the text." We call it free indirect narrative because it drifts from the narrator's own voice into the thoughts of characters, and indirect because it relates the thoughts of those characters without quotation marks, without reporting actual speech, and often instead paraphrasing the logic of characters, or at times imitating their voices, in a kind of non-committal way, leading us to believe that those are the words or thoughts of the characters, despite the absence of quotation marks. A key word in what Flavin has said here is that word filtered. The narrator doesn't give us all of the thoughts of the characters at all times, but has filtered them, is selective. And I think Flavin has put some suspicious sounding quotation marks around the word authority, because the narrator actually seems to cast off authority or responsibility with this indirectness. It's a playful and preferential way of telling a story. It doesn't attempt to speak authoritatively in the manner of a science textbook or an instruction manual. And so we wonder, do we trust this narrator's representation of events? Is it giving us all the most important information? Is it trustworthy or is it mischievous?